All right, so today's preview is Vancouver and Minnesota. So I wanted to do Edmonton and Chicago. I did. But we don't know the status for Corey Crawford. So I haven't been reporting in News of the Day on players that are or aren't playing in practice. But with Crawford, it feels like maybe it's something else. Maybe there's something else keeping Crawford out, and that's why I'm not doing Chicago today. I want to delay it for the next few days, and we'll see if, when I get to the Edmonton-Chicago matchup, if we've got clarification on whether or not Crawford plays. Because if he doesn't, they have to go with Delia, or they have to go with Subban. That is a huge difference right there. So we're going to talk about Vancouver and Minnesota. And yes, I'm wearing the Canucks jersey because I think the Canucks should win this series. Should. That being said, it's going to be close. My wife, being a fan of both teams, thinks it could be kind of boring at the beginning. So for Minnesota, the way that they win is simple. You just kind of take the life out of the game a little bit. For Vancouver, they're going to need to neutralize their scoring forwards and neutralize Quinn Hughes. Good luck with that. And just, go out there and do what they were doing going into the pause. So going into the pause, these teams were headed in completely opposite directions. And this is why when Canuck fans are like, hey, we should have made the playoffs. So we've got to be above that line before we knew how this was going to work. I had reservations because I was like, first off, there was over 20 games left. And secondly, the Canucks were definitely not trending in a playoff direction. They were trending in the opposite. They were 36, 27, and 6, 565 winning percentage, which leaves them 17th overall in the NHL in winning percentage. Just outside the top 16. And you guys wonder why it's a 24-team tournament? This is part of the reason why. Minnesota 35, 27, and 7. So they won one less game. They got one more overtime loss. They have a 558 winning percentage. And they're 4 spots below Vancouver in the overall standings. 21st. Don't let that fool you. And there isn't home ice advantage. I know, last change. All last change means is that the other team has to make their line change before you do. And then you drop the puck. So it's before face-offs. And after the face-off, that team can then start line matching. So in a situation where things are really truly neutral, 32 regulation or overtime wins for Vancouver, 33 regulation overtime wins for Minnesota. But going into the break, Vancouver was 4-5-1 in their last 10. Minnesota was 7-3. And Vancouver was trending in the wrong direction for one reason. Markstrom was out. As soon as Markstrom was out, things kind of fell apart. And people point out, well, their defense wasn't as good. Yeah. And it felt like their defense started playing a little different because they knew the goaltender behind them was different. And this is something that I've talked about for years, where there are certain teams that play better for certain goalies than others, and it's this bizarre goal support thing that happens where certain goalies get it and others don't. And sometimes the defense in front of a goaltender looks really confident, and sometimes they look kind of, I don't know, to quote Binnington, nervous. I know Binnington's not nervous. I know. So your goals leader for Vancouver, JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, share that with 27. Assists, Miller and Hughes with 45. JT Miller leads them in points with 72. And Miller coming in was a huge boost to the Canucks. So while the debate was, is Pettersson the MVP or is it Markstrom? And people were jumping up and going, hey, it's Quinn Hughes. JT Miller, you can make the argument for him as well. And their power play, in part, turned around because this is a team that has some star power on it now. 24.1% on the power play. Penalty kill, 80.5%. So the special teams, not bad. But Minnesota's power play isn't bad, 21.3%. Their penalty kill, 77.2%. That penalty kill, this power play tells you Minnesota might want to stay out of the box. Minnesota might be smart to stay out of the box. Now on the Minnesota side, Zach Parise's their leading scorer in goals with 25. Suter led them in assists with 40. And Kevin Fiala having a career year, 54 points. And if Fiala's for real, if this is really going to be Kevin Fiala going forward, somebody owes Fenton an apology. I'm not even kidding at this point, because a lot of these trades that were being mocked openly last summer, they've kind of worked out. So there you go. Now, looking at players who could have a big series, who didn't necessarily have the best offensive seasons on paper, I've gone with Gaudette for Vancouver, and there's an honest reason. I could have put Eriksson up here. And Eriksson with 6 goals and 7 assists, absolutely miserable season. But I don't know that Eriksson has it left in him. And I'm being honest. I don't know that I've seen any pushback by Eriksson to show that he is still a scorer or going to be a scorer in the National Hockey League. So I went with Gaudette, 59 games, 12 goals, 21 assists, 33 points. Because I think Gaudette is better than those 12 goals would tell you. I think Gaudette is capable of scoring a big goal in an overtime and being this guy that if you're a Minnesota fan, you may be like, where did Gaudette come from? Because again, if you're not a Canuck fan, you may not be aware that he had a pretty darn good season. And he has fully made Brandon Sutter replaceable. And he's turned it into a situation where Gaudette's probably going to push him out of the lineup sooner rather than later. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but Benning's got an issue where Sutter's making a lot of money, and now he's got a guy that's already replaced him in the lineup. So I think we'll see what happens with Gaudette probably when the season's over, and then how that affects Sutter and all of that. Because down the middle, you've got to think for the Canucks now, Horvat would slot into that second-line center spot, and then your third-line center would be Gaudette. And if Sutter goes into the fourth line, where's Beagle? So yeah, it's a good problem to have, kind of, if not for the cap implications. If it wasn't for cap, it's a good problem, but because of the cap, it's definitely a problem. Now, on the Minnesota side of things, I went with Galchenyuk. Why? Because Galchenyuk actually wasn't playing badly for Minnesota, and keep in mind, Vancouver likes Galchenyuk. And Galchenyuk can score goals against Vancouver. I'm nervous that once we reach the offseason, that Vancouver will be like, hey, look, we got Galchenyuk, and I'm going to be like, see, this is how things bite me in the ass. So, 59 games, 8 goals, 16 assists, 24 points for Galchenyuk this year. I would not be surprised to see him do well because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. So, would I be entirely surprised to see him come out and score a couple of big goals against Vancouver? No. Goaltending, Markstrom, 23-16-4 with a .918 save percentage. Demko, 13-10-2 with a .905 save percentage. I definitely give the advantage to Vancouver in net, because people have asked in many live streams, how does Minnesota beat Vancouver? Goaltending. They have to beat Markstrom. They have to get the better goaltending. Now, if it's Stalock, I think they've got a shot at that. If Stalock can tap into what he was doing towards the end of the year, 20-11-4 with a .910 save percentage, Stalock was playing better than that .910 save percentage would tell you. Now, Dubnyk, who is on their roster, 12-15-2 with an .890 save percentage. He was one of those guys who had rumblings that maybe he wouldn't come back. That due to, having a family and pandemics and all this, maybe I'm not going to come back. He did. Kakkonen, though, 3-1-1 with a .913 save percentage, and Dean Evason has already said that, yes, it'll be a 3-horse race for a job in the play-in round, and he's not ruling out Kakkonen. And when you look at those numbers, why would he? Honestly, I think Dubnyk may very well be out of Minnesota next season. I would not be surprised if he's out of Minnesota next season, because I think Stalock and Kakkonen could very well end up being the tandem. And Dubnyk's numbers were ugly this year. Let's be honest, they were not great numbers this year. So, shots per game, for anybody who cares, 31.2 for Vancouver. They allowed 33.3 shots per game. Way too many shots allowed by Vancouver. I had this discussion plenty of times during the regular season. Canuck fans will let me know. Shots per game for Minnesota, 30.1. Shots against, 30.7. So the overall numbers, both teams allow more shots than they take. But Minnesota's a little bit closer than Vancouver. And Canuck fans will say, yes, but what was the quality of the shots? I don't know, ask Demko and Markstrom. Pretty sure they probably still got some bruising from some of those games where they allowed a ton of shots. So Vancouver needs to keep those down, because while Minnesota does tend to be kind of a more boring-ish kind of team, they can score goals. And I do like the chances for Minnesota next year when Kaprizov joins this roster. I think Minnesota's legit going to be a playoff team as soon as next season. And then, of course, the question gets asked of, well, who's going to drop out to get them in? I don't know who drops out to get Buffalo in. It's a mystery. No playoffs for Vancouver since 2015. They win this play-in round. They get into the playoffs for the first time since then. And that would be great news. That would honestly be great. For the first time in 5 years, they're finally in a playoff spot. If they lose this play-in round, you have a 1 in 8 chance of winning the draft lottery. Yeah, Vancouver's winning a draft lottery. Yes, it's funny. On the Minnesota side, no playoffs for them last year, and they lost in round 1 in both 2018 and 2017. So, Minnesota's overdue for a run. They haven't gone on any kind of a run since 2003. For Vancouver, looking to show that the new generation of Canucks is capable of making some gains and finally, getting into a playoff spot and doing something once they get there. Now, when we look at the sort of outside of the main leaders and we look for the guys who may make a difference, on the Vancouver side, Toffoli and Pearson are both on the board because I'll be interested to see if they get put together at some point. If Vancouver struggles out of the gate, do you have Toffoli and Pearson together as they were in LA, or do you start the series with them together? I don't know, people are going to be commenting underneath. Well, in training camp, I don't want to hear about training camp lines. I don't want to hear it. Zach McEwen, I have on the board as well because McEwen, very, very solid in his call-up, and McEwen kind of replaces Beagle or Sutter as well. See, Gaudette and McEwen kind of make it so if the Canucks get rid of both Beagle and Sutter, that'd free up about $6 million because these guys don't play for free. And then, ta-da, you may be able to keep Toffoli. There you go. So, Benning, I will accept a paycheck. Anyways, there you go. We'll see if McEwen's one of those aces in the hole. On the Minnesota side, Ryan Donato, who I was not happy that Boston traded when they did. I still think Donato's an excellent young forward, and I think he's starting to show that goal-scoring acumen that we knew was there. Eriksson Ek had a good season. I know the offense hasn't quite reached the level that might have been expected of him coming into the league, but he's a good player, and I think he could have a big series. And how motivated is Mikko Koivu going to be, considering this could be his last year? Maybe he comes back for one more. We'll see what he does. And maybe if Minnesota goes on a run, maybe he says, now's a good time to go out. I will say this. I thought that the Lumberjack, the Johnny Canuck, matched the logo for the Minnesota Wild nicely. So when I got them on the board, I went, no, that's good. We're good. We're fine. We're all set. But I do think this series is going to be a lot of fun. I will say for the record, I don't hate the Minnesota Wild. And I don't anticipate that I will during this series either. I didn't find that they were necessarily a dirty team during the season. And I think this should be a very fun series between two teams that are trying to show, hey, in Minnesota's case, we're doing the right things. We're getting closer. And for Vancouver, showing its fans that the last 5 years have been worth it. That now we've got the star players. We can be a playoff team every year. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Winners and all that. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. For all your support, I will talk to you again soon.